Hi everyone, and you are welcome to Multiple Inheritance Relationship lecture. In this lecture, we will discuss the following use case. Assume that you want to implement a class for a clock and you want this clock to show both date and time. So how to implement these classes and how to implement the relationship between these classes, this is what we will talk about in details in this lecture. So let's get started. I'll start this lecture by a quick overview to the available relationships types. Then, we will talk about multiple inheritance relationship and the syntax of this relationship. And as usual, I'll end up this lecture by a quick summary. Previously, we have seen that we have 4 types of inheritance relationship. And in this lecture, mainly we are talking about multiple inheritance relationship. In this relationship, usually we have a single child class, and this class inherits multiple parent classes. As you see here in this diagram, so I have a single child class and multiple parents classes. Now let's talk about the syntax of this relationship. First of all, you have to create the parent classes that you want to inherit from. As you see here, I've created 2 classes, which are parent class name 1 and parent class name 2. For the first one, I have a single instance attribute, which is attr1, and for the second one, I have single instance attribute, which is attr2. After this, you have to create the child class, and in my case here, it's named child class name, and you will see now that this class inherits 2 classes, parent class name 1 and parent class name 2. And you will see that the constructor of this class now accepts 3 attributes, attr1, attr2, and attr3. attr1 which belongs to the first parent, attr2 which belongs to the second parent, and attr3 it's a new attribute which belongs only to the child class. Also, you have to note that in this relationship now, in the child class constructor, we are calling the constructors for both of the parents in this example. The last point that I want to talk about here, that for the sake of example right now, I'm using just 2 parent classes, but in the reality, you can use as many classes as you want as parent classes. Now let's move to Jupyter Notebook in order to see a real example using Python programming language. As I mentioned in the introduction, that in this lecture, we will discuss how we can create a clock using Python, and we assume that this clock should support both date and time. So first of all, let me show you a high-level overview to what we are going to implement. So first of all, I will create a class for time, and I will call it time. Also, I will create a class for date, and I will call it date, and I will create a class for clock, and this class clock will inherit both time and date, and then pass. You see in this example that the clock class inherits both time and date, and for this reason we call it multiple inheritance relationship. Alright, now let's create each one of these class individually in order to see the actual implementation of this example. Let's start by creating the class time. So I'll say class time, and then I'll define the constructor, and as you see here I have 3 instance attributes, which are hours, minutes, and seconds. And here just a simple documentation string to show you that hour should be between 0 to 24, minute should be between 0 to 60, and second should be 0 to 60. From this we can understand that when I want to accept these parameters, which are hours, minutes, and seconds, there are some conditions that should be verified first. So let's see together. If I copy and paste this part, look how much easy it is. First of all, I'm checking that the type of hours is integer and the value of hours should be bigger than 0 and smaller than 24. If this condition is satisfied, I'll accept the value of the hours. Otherwise, I'll raise an exception and I'll say hours have to be an integer between 0 to 23. And we will do exactly the same processing for minutes and for seconds. And don't forget that both minutes and seconds should be in the range 0 to 60. Alright, now let's in this example also override str method in order to print the time properly. And usually we know that the time is printed in the following way. So we should have hour, minute, then second. So I will say it's a formatted string in which I will print first self.hours, then self.minutes, then self.seconds. Now let me define an object from this time class in order to see if it works properly. So I'll say time, and here I'll pass 3 values. So I'll say it's 12, 30, 30. And if I want to print the value, I'll see the following. I have to use print here. Alright, so this is the time value. Also, we know that the clock tick each 1 second, or in other words, we have to add a functionality that allow my clock to increase 1 second. So how to do that? All what I have to do is just defining the following function, def increase 1 second. And for the sake of time, I'll just copy and paste what this function should do, and it's quite simple. When the time increased by 1 second, actually, I'm adding the seconds by 1. Then I'm checking if number of seconds becomes divisible by 60, which means it's 60. So in this case, I will reset second to 0 and I will add 1 minute. I will do exactly the same thing for the minutes, and when I reach to 60 minutes, I will increase 1 hour, and exactly the same thing for hours. When it reaches 24, I will reset the value, and that's all. So quite simple and straightforward function. Now let's try this function, time.increase 1 second, and run. And you will see here that I have this second increased by 1. Now let's see how to implement the class date. Actually, the class date, it's quite simple. It's exactly like the class time, but instead of hours, minutes, and seconds, we have year, month, and day. So let's see. So I will print. I will paste this class. You will see here, it's named date. It has year, month, day, and I'm doing exactly the same processing. So I'm check if the type is integer, then I will assign the value. For the month, I will do the same thing and make sure that month is less than 13. And for day, I will do exactly the same thing, and I have to make sure that it's less than 32. When you increase 1 day, also here, the logic, it's not quite important for now, but just be careful that some months have 30 days, and we know that the second month in the year, which is February, it has 28 or 29 days according if it's a leap year or not. Alright, and also here I am overriding string function in order to print the date in a formatted way. So let's define now an object from this class. So I'll say date equal to date, and let's say the year, it's 2021. Let's say it's April 13. And let me print this date. Alright, so the date class works without any problem. Great, now let's implement the complete clock class. So I will copy and paste this part, and look here, it's quite easy. I define a class for clock, and I will inherit time and date. And because now I need both date and time, so I need day, month, year. Also I need hours, minutes, and seconds. Next, I will call the constructors of time and date, and in order to do that, you will type the following. You will say date, which means one of the classes that you inherit from, .init, self, then you pass day, month, and year. Also, you will do exactly the same thing for time, and now you will call the constructor and you will pass hours, minutes, and seconds. Also, we know that the clock usually tick, and I mean by tick here, it's just increasing the second by 1. So let's implement this function. First of all, I have to increase 1 second, and as you see here, now the class clock has this function, increase 1 second, which is inherited from the class time. And then we check if the hours becomes 0, which means we have a complete full day. In this case, we will increase 1 day. Quite easy and quite straightforward. Look here, how we access to hours via self. It's very simple, because also hours is one of the attributes that time class has, and because of inheritance, we have access to. Now let's override str method in order to print the complete now time and date together. So how to do that? Also, it's quite easy. All what I am going to do is the following. I'll say return date.string, which means I will call string function from the date, plus I will keep space with a comma between the date and time, and then I will call the time string function. Now let's see an example about this clock. Let me say time equal to clock, and for this clock we need day, so let's say it's 12 April 2021, and for the hours let's say it's 12:36:30. Now let me print the time, and let me print one empty space here and run. I got an exception, let's check the reason. Okay, year has to be between, okay, it's quite easy here. Let's just replace the order here. Let me make this year here and month here, because in the constructor of date class we have year, month, and day. Let me rerun now, and you will see that the value is printed properly. Let me print this after I increasing the value by 1 second, or let me say by using tick function now, because tick is responsible for calling the other function, and run. Alright, I will not print this, I have to print this, and run. So you will see this is the original time, and this is after increasing 1 second, so I get 31 here. So it's quite easy and quite straightforward. So the key point here that when we use multiple inheritance, first of all, you have to inherit all the classes that you need. In the constructor, you have to call the constructors of these classes, and that's all. The class clock now has access to all attributes and methods that are available in time class and that are available in the date class. And thank you so much. That's all for this lecture. Now let's recap what we have learned. Simply, in this lecture, we've talked about multiple inheritance relationship, and we see that in this relationship we have a single child class and multiple parents classes. And in order to implement this relationship, first of all, you have to define parents classes, and then you have to define the child class that should inherit all of these parent classes. And don't forget that you have to call, if it's necessary, all the parents classes constructors within the constructor of the child class. Now please refer to the challenges available in the lecture resources in order to practice what you have learned so far. Thank you so much for your time, and if you are available, join me in the next lecture.